Welcome back to Unfinished Business. I'm your host, Kimberly Griggs, and today I am joined by Pam Vitaz, founder of Hestia House Method, a practice that helps homes move from stuck to sold by aligning the energy of a space, not just transforming the look of it, but really aligning the energy. We are going to get into what's known as the felt sense and how shifting the energy of a home can make or break a sale. And also, she will describe and explain how this complements traditional staging and marketing for a home that's going on the market. We are also going to get into the crux of Pam's story and how she was able to build a business around this. So for our listeners who are in real estate, this episode is especially for you. So welcome, Pam. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Likewise. So give us the short version, the kind of the Reader Digest version. Real estate, 22 years and energy clearing. How did these worlds or these passions rather align?
Yeah. So for me, I kind of stumbled into real estate. And then the intuitive side, the psychic side of myself was something that was always there, but kind of taboo and something I was supposed to be hiding and felt very closeted about and didn't feel like there were very many circles that I could share my gifts. But sometimes they would just pop out and people would always say, well, how did you know that? For me, it was like a sixth sense. I always understood that there were these vibes. Almost everyone will walk into a space and they could tell if the vibe is off. A lot of times we bypass our own intuition because we're moving quickly. Like even if you walk into an office building and the vibe is off, but you're on your way to a particular office, you don't give it enough attention. I found myself utilizing these gifts every time I went to list a house when I got into real estate.
When you say vibe, tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah. Vibe, maybe it's an overused word, but I think it's understood as a feeling you can't necessarily explain, but an inner knowing. And people talk about outfits as vibes. People talk about spaces having the right vibes. A party, what are the vibes going to be like? So vibes comes from the word, of course, vibrations. And we think of that maybe musically at first, but now as we understand more and more about science, we know light gives off vibrations. People give off vibrations, plants give off vibrations, animals give off vibrations. So when we talk about the vibe of a space, it's sort of like the conglomeration of this entire package, all of the things that are setting it one way or another. When you're looking at a house that's on the market and it's completely empty, it hasn't been staged, the people maybe have moved out long ago, the vibes are flat, they're dead. So some people think, well, it's like a blank palette. You can imagine anything in there. But the reality is not most buyers are able to just imagine that well.
Myself included. That's the hardest thing for me. I would hear things when we were house shopping. Oh, great bones, and I was like, that doesn't really mean anything to me because I can't envision anything.
But you probably could feel how you felt when you were in a space.
Absolutely.
And sometimes the way that you feel in a space is dependent on the other people's stuff. So if you're selling a house and you still have it junked up, most realtors are going to say, we need to clear these things out. We need to stage it for the best foot forward. Now, some people will just sell their house in any condition, and that's always a choice. But we're talking about those people that want to maximize their opportunity when they're selling their home. So if you're in a giant fight with your partner right before the open house, that lingers in the space. So if you're going to be living in the space when you're doing showings, I have some tools to support the sellers in preparing the space before there are showings. Again, just like you would tidy up physically, there's ways to tidy up energetically as well.
What was the moment that you thought this is more than a hunch? This is something that is working. Like, was there a moment or a story that comes to mind when you experimented with this and you saw a success that was replicated?
When it really started to be like, wait, this is something, was when other realtors in my market started calling me and asking me to come out to their different houses and what I thought. One house in particular that made me think, like, this needs to be a business. I went out to the house. My daughter was even on FaceTime because she shares these gifts with me. And we couldn't find anything really energetically wrong with the house. It has some weird physical features, but that's something a future person could potentially change. But everything felt fine to me. I'm like, why is this house not moving? It was in a beautiful location. But my daughter said she felt something. The block was in a particular corner. And when I walked into that house, there was a photo of the homeowner in that space. It was taken down for the photos. So she couldn't see them, but she could feel that the block was basically the person in this photo. So I was able to take that information back to the agent. And it just gave her confidence to say to the seller, look, your house is perfect and you're what's in the way. So it gave her more confidence to make some changes that she felt a little intimidated to make.
Yeah, and that has to be very complicated. They want to make a good first impression to the person that is looking, but also their services to the client. I mean, they're there to sell the home. So that has to be a delicate balance, I'm sure, and difficult for most.
So there's lots of realtors who would like to say things to their clients so they don't feel confident to say, especially people
Mhm.
who are newer to the industry. And even if they don't tell their seller or their buyers, well, Pam thinks XYZ, it still gives them the confidence to say, I've really analyzed the market and this is where I think the biggest block is. And when they use words like block, which is sort of an energy staging word, something obviously that's in the way of something else, the flow of the energy, the flow of the transaction, it can make a big difference in the way they're able to trust their own intuition and communicate to their clients.
What are some other patterns you keep seeing in listings that look great? The home is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but energetically it's just off. What are some other things like that?
Yeah, I think the overlook especially when people sort of HGTV their house, as I like to say, where they make it as same as what they're seeing on the market. I don't think that's really what sells homes. So what I see in the way is where people have anxiety around the sale of their home. They don't give it enough space. That's one pattern. It feels like right now I've had so many unique situations, but I would say one of the biggest things is like people's own fear, or it could be the agent's fear as well.
Like they need it to close, being almost like a desperation.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
anytime there's a desperate energy, so I think feel confident in your decisions.
For someone who has no experience in hearing this information and are just now being introduced to it, what is an energetic alignment and how do you go about clearing that out?
So I think that we can start just with the very first house we ever had, which is our body. Our body is our home, right? And so our house is an extension of our body, right? It's the space that sort of mirrors, and it's a body that we share potentially with other people as well. So when we make our spaces, it's a collaboration with all of the individuals who are there. And when people have frenetic energy or they're disconnected from themselves or so much scrolling and just letting the outside influences of the world put you in a tizzy. And the methods that I'm providing to people include meditations to help them get more grounded and landed in themselves. So whenever I'm clearing a house, I have to practice my own methods because I'm not immune. Just because I know how to do this doesn't mean I'm the expert at it in terms of like my own personal life. I still have to utilize the methods every single time that I'm engaging in this energy shifting. So it's about getting really clear in my own energy, getting grounded, connecting to the earth, and calming myself to a place where I can see. So when I say see, for me it's an inner vision and it's often an interpretation of the experience of the people in the home. So I
Hmm.
know that can sound a little bit complicated, and the best way to explain it is really to allow people to go through some of the meditations or also just let people start to experiment on their own. When you walk into your home, how do you feel? When you walk into your home after something's gone on, how do you feel? If you ever go into a space, you're like, I just need to move the furniture around, and you don't really know why. To take
Yeah.
time and have habits that help you to be calm in a space and focused.
What I'm hearing is it's about clearing your inner house first.
Yes.
So let's say you're doing that to the best of your ability, and I'm assuming that your guides and tactics would kind of lead someone through that process, and that's not necessarily a one-time thing. I would imagine continuing the process throughout the journey of the selling experience would be very helpful as you're going to have new people coming in and taking a look at that space. But what are some things, tangibly that someone can do once they've done some of that work? So in other words, what would step 2 be as far as making the space reflect that inner work?
Well, I think that you can tell when a space has been cleared when you walk into it just because of the way that it feels. If you're an intuitive person, like I said, a lot of people are incredibly disconnected from their intuition. And my hope is that if this stressful, transitory time of life, buying or selling a home, is what gets you to start doing a little bit of meditation, a little bit of inner work, that's on the top of my list for what motivates me to do this, to help liberate people in their own personal experience. And why the house buying or selling journey is because this is a big pain point time of life. So
Yeah.
when people buy my products, which are downloadable, and there's also free guides on my website, they're able to listen time and time again. And particularly in the buyer's guide, I always say, as you're sitting in your car, every single time before you walk into a home, I need you to do these 3-minute grounding exercise. It's going to make all the difference. So you walk into that home in a much more neutral space, not having had an argument with your boss or your partner or whatever on the phone prior. You're able to walk in with a clear head. And then when you come back to the car, take notes right away so that you can remember when you go back to the online photos how you really felt in that home.
Yeah, no, I've been looking at this from a selling perspective, but from a buying perspective, when you are visiting multiple homes, it does feel overwhelming and a lot. And then you're expected to make a decision. Well, if you're not mindful, that can be incredibly difficult.
I think that it's really interesting. What some people discover is like, wow, I want something completely different than I thought I wanted. Like the bank tells you can qualify for this much, so you think you should go up to the top of your price point. Your dad told you need to get acreage, and so you think you need acreage even though you wanted to be closer into the inner city. Like people have ideas of what they think they want without ever challenging their own ideas. And so when they go through these guides, it kind of pokes them in a way to answer these questions for themselves. And then those answers would go directly in the inbox of their realtor. So it's a tool to help the buyers or sellers communicate better with their own intuition, but also with their own realtor as well.
So walk us through the process and how someone gets from that point to your realtor's inbox.
Yeah. So if your realtor gives you the course, it would automatically happen. So the realtor would give like a URL directly to their clients. And then the client would go through the course. It's a 5-step course. It has 5 little steps inside of each step. And then at the end of each little module, you'll have a couple of questions. And those questions help you get clear based on what you just learned. And that information gets shared with your realtor. What realtors say is that they really appreciate the opportunity to have this one piece taken off their plate. It feels to them like a more thorough, especially for the buyers, a more thorough education. A lot of good realtors will do an education for a buyer, but unless someone's a first-time home buyer, I think some realtors might just skirt off because they feel like they already know what's going on. But unless you buy a house every year, you kind of need a refresher. So they're really appreciating that that's saving them the time. And because the buyers are getting much more clear, they're not asking to see homes that they know that they're not going to live in. And so that might save the agent 2 or 3 days of showings.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
definitely worth their investment.
So on the business side of this, Pam, how did you package this so that, that this could be a very concise process? Like walk me through the business building side of this. I'm curious.
Honestly, it was a 4-year process. So for me, it was really, really challenging. I'm an incredibly creative person, and I feel like I need to reinvent the wheel every single time I make a project. So, a dear friend who owns a yoga studio and has created these beautiful products for women and has used a platform, and she recommended that I try that same platform. And so she's been supporting me and has become the vendor to to get all these ideas into a concise program.
How are you able to articulate something that is for somebody who's not very intuitive? How are you able to articulate the importance of this and the value of this?
So we've spent a lot of time and energy trying to help the website communicate that really well. I also have a book that's coming out called The House Whisperer. It's a very short book and it's written very, very concisely to help people understand these concepts quickly. And that will be dropping very soon. These tools will help be a little bit of a gateway for people to understand these concepts. I think putting out something out there that's kind of different and not mainstream, but it really speaks to the people that it speaks to. So I'm hoping that it just gets shared within the right circles to
Yeah.
support who needs it.
Who is the person that this speaks to the most?
I think it both speaks to the consumer, but hopefully I'm wanting to speak more to the realtor because I really love helping women in business. When women are successful in business, they help other women in business. And
Absolutely.
so it's lovely to help a consumer, but that's like a one-off. And you help one realtor, she helps 100 clients.
Yeah.
So my dream is really to be able to create speaking engagements and retreats and things that are fun where women realtors are able to really drop in and drop out and relax
Yes.
and
Yeah,
like
because talk about keeping your personal house clear. Fun fact, my sister who actually helps produce this podcast, she was an agent for a time and it was a very stressful experience for her to kind of shake off one transaction and move into someone else because you're dealing with people. And I love the way that you're referring to energy as your personal house because yes, as someone who is empathic, which she very much is, you're absorbing all of that energy too. And so I do think that agents have one of the most stressful jobs. I don't have online stats to back that up, but it just seems like people that I know in that space have a very difficult time just kind of shaking off the bat and moving into the next thing. And it's all so fast paced. You're reactive more than you are, kind of proactive almost sometimes.
I think so. And I think that like this one thing that makes women realtors, especially like second career women realtors, so good at this is because they're empathic, because they
Mm-hmm.
understand, and they sometimes will understand the client's needs better than their own because this is an industry where people are very deeply personally invested. And so the realtor's seen it a million times, but you also can't tell someone they're wrong when it's their own inner journey about moving into or selling their home. But the realtor can see the ways that they're wrong. So if I'm able to universalize some of these themes in my products and the realtor says, here, just listen to this, it takes some burden off of them and hopefully reduces their burnout while helping their clients as well.
What is something that you believe about selling homes that you've changed your mind on?
My gosh. Well, I mean, I think one thing that led us here is that I was definitely a know-it-all. I knew everything about what my house was worth, whatever. And the reality is only the market knows what the house is worth. Only the market will tell us what it's really going to sell for. So even with the energy clearing, it's like I don't necessarily make houses sell. I make people
Absolutely.
feel more comfortable in the homes, I
Yeah.
believe. And I teach people how to reset the homes too. So it's not just me coming in every single time. It's teaching people to clean their homes energetically.
Let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
If I go home and I'm feeling like the vibe. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Exactly what you said earlier. Like I walked in one day and I don't know why it just felt very stale, very stagnant. And I just felt this creative burst of energy to do something different, which is kind of interesting because I actually rearranged the furniture to the position when we moved in.
Okay.
So give me, like, in the context of that scenario, what are some things if you walk in and you just feel like I've got to do something to refresh? What are some go-to things that you might do to shift the energy?
So stale energy, it depends on what kind of energy it is, but let's just speak about stale energy or stuck energy. I love if you can find some puppies or some children to like run around. That always like brings the energy up. Singing, dancing, moving artwork from one area of the home to another. Like this piece of artwork has never, ever even been in that space at all. Doing that often will really, really support the movement of the energy, moving furniture, vacuuming behind furniture. Sometimes we have really heavy pieces of furniture and we
Yeah.
don't want to move them because they're so heavy. But taking the time to do that quarterly, I think can really, really prevent stuck and stale energy, especially people with small pets. If the pets don't always make it outside to do their business, things like that, you might need to be pulling up carpets. You might need to put like certain fabrics out into the sun or washing drapes or things like that, depending on how long it's been. But I would say for the most basic, if you're already doing good quarterly or twice a year cleans like that, I think that just the basic vacuuming, and even some people like to carry a candle around the room or utilize sage. I often love toning, like just making a sound that resonates to yourself, or maybe a crystal or a metal Tibetan bowl, some sound healing. Call it. Candles are great. Opening windows and doors, letting fresh air in. Like I think a lot of the things are pretty obvious, but we just don't always take the time to do that. We don't slow down enough to even notice that the vibe is off.
Yeah, that's so true. It's just like you're, again, putting yourself at a personal house. Like when you go outside after you've been in front of a screen for so long, the relief that you feel. So, what, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying bringing pieces of that literally to inside the home and letting that energy flow, those sounds, that light, the air.
Even taking a pause to ask yourself or even ask the room, like, what's wrong in here? What could be different? What could be better? And you might be surprised if you get quiet enough, the answers do come. It's not just for buyers and sellers. I mean, that's the focus because it's a transitory spot and I'm working with realtors, but
Yeah.
really anyone can utilize these tools.
I love that. So where do we find these guys? Like, how, walk us through the process of what this looks like for anyone looking to make some changes in the home.
Yes. So if you just go to my website, which is the HestiaHouseMethod.com, if you put your email address in, you get a free numerology guide. And so that will teach you some things about this. And then also you can book a house clearing with me directly, or you can sign up to learn more about how to do this yourself.
And what is encompasses a house clearing with you?
Yeah. So what happens is I analyze the current situation of the home. I try not to get any information from the homeowner prior to the clearing, only the address. So I will go and do my own work for about 24 hours before I reach out, and then I'll give a small report, an audio report. And then if the homeowner or the seller has questions about what I've reported, then they can always reach out and get more clarity. But basically, it just happens within my own inner journey, and that's unique. So I could sit and describe my exact inner journey, but the point is that we all learn our own vocabulary about how we see energy, and that's something that happens through the coursework.
I want to move on to kind of the again, kind of back to building the business. But what is, we call this show Unfinished Business for a
Right.
reason. And I think, exactly what you're describing fits very well the theme of this show. There's always things that are going to continue to be undone. What feels unfinished for you right now when it comes to the business and or your own gifts and expanding this?
Yeah. So I think for me, a lot. I feel like I've learned a lot about some best practices in terms of social media marketing and things like that. But the implementation of that feels daunting. And then the idea of, where is the balance of when you bring on another support person? Do you bring somebody on in a full time way, or continue to use vendors where you're sort of a part of a queue rather than having somebody full time in your court? I think that's always a piece that feels a little bit challenging as I evolve creatively. So that always is kind of feeling undone for me. And then I can always foresee the next iteration of where I'm going as a person and where my capacities are going in business in terms of who I work with and how I work. And so trying not to look too far into the future and just allow that to be in the future where it belongs so I can focus on the now. I think that's always a challenge. And one way I combat this is I leverage my artistic gifts to communicate to myself. All around my office, you'll find canvases that are literally just all different colors and a Sharpie marker on them as if they're sticky notes. So I'm seeing as the canvases evolve what's coming next.
I hear this a lot from all the entrepreneurs that we have on as guests is that, working in your business and on your business, it is just, it's not for the faint of heart. It's difficult. And, keeping yourself or preventing burnout, I guess, is really the subject matter that I'm thinking about here. But what are some things that you do beyond that? Or what would your advice be to someone who doesn't have a thing yet to get rid of that, to really work on their own inner house and clear that out so they can think creatively and move forward?
Yeah, so I host a meditation once a week. It's a free meditation. People come to my home. We usually have anywhere from 8 to like 20 people, and it's really really lovely. It's an hour and we're really really good at keeping it right to an hour, and that fills my cup so much as it does the other people who come. So I would say, what is it that you love to do that builds community for you? Can you have some friends come over for cooking hour? Not just like book club where people drink wine, but like let there be an activity, whether that's a craft or cooking or a dance. And even just as like a silly TikTok dance routine or whatever. But
Yeah.
like to come back to your inner like teenage girl, like
Tell us a little bit more what to expect in the book and give us a 30-second plug on the book.
sure. The book is going to be a little bit of a sales plug for Hestia House just because it's filled with meditations on the website. So the book shares that a few times. But the book tells a lot of what I'll just call them ghost stories and just some of the stories that I've encountered, some of the juicier stories over the years. I would say like 75% of all homes just don't have anything terribly weird in them. But every now and then you definitely get some things that need to move on. And so there's some of those exact stories inside the book, as well as some tips and tricks about some of these techniques for people who might, not want to dive too far in, but have some good tips that they can come back to.
Exciting. And for everyone listening who is itching for a copy, we will definitely make sure to go back and relink the book directly where you can order that, along with Pam's information, of course. So I want to move on to sort of the last segment of Unfinished Business, and there's a couple of questions. One is, if I handed you a magic wand and you could only remove one thing or change one thing to make the momentum of building all that you are doing right now a little easier, what would that be?
Goodness. I think if I could magic wand my other businesses away.
Why is it? That's so interesting too. It's like people get into entrepreneurship or they start one business and then, very often you see these synergies within your business. And so it's like you're branching off into something else and there's this big animal. All of a sudden you're trying to figure out how to, ring that back in or find some order out of the chaos that you
Yeah.
created.
Or could you hire somebody to like drop that? And I've tried. I'm in those
Yeah.
processes too. But yeah, it's when you want to bootstrap the next business, it's not free, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
what do you need
So
to
fair.
invest? And
So
I'm to
fair.
the age where I'm not really willing to work 24 hours a day. And so I'd rather use some capital to invest in some tools that are going to make my job easier.
Okay, so final question. This is kind of a hypothetical scenario here, but let's just say that, you've done everything that you could think of creatively and you left no gas in the tank, all right? And you have to only leave 3 words of wisdom to another aspiring entrepreneur. What would your advice to them be?
I mean, for sure, trust yourself. Listening to everybody else's opinion about what you're doing, especially if it's visionary and new, is just confusing and depressing and makes you feel lonely, I think. So trust yourself. Don't be afraid to spend money. Like that's a part of trusting in yourself and investing in yourself. And if you're afraid to spend that money, that's like a way of telling yourself, like, I don't believe in this product. And I would also say keep up with the technology because I don't think these communication marketing tools are going away. I mean, who wants to spend all day making reels? But you have to a degree. So finding great systems and great support people and just don't think that you can still get it done without those tools.
Well, Pam, thank you so much. Like I said, whenever we conclude the show, we will definitely make sure to link all of Pam's information below. This was really interesting. I mean, this is a very unique creative business, and I want to acknowledge you for taking a gift and a passion that, maybe 20 years ago would have been really difficult to talk about. But I do think there's a lot more interest, and there is, scientific fact about what you're sharing. We're always going to be faced with the critics, but the fact that you're charging forward in it, I really commend that spirit in anyone who has it, because as I shared before, it's not easy to build a business of any magnitude. So I just want to acknowledge you for showing up in the world and offering your gifts in a very creative way. If there is any other questions for feedback for Pam, definitely leave your comments below. We'll be sharing this out. If you're interested in having your own house clearing, and if you are an agent and this appeals to you, please like and share this with a friend. But until next time, thank you all for tuning in to Unfinished Business.
Thank you, Kimberly.